All righty, folks, welcome back. Happy Friday. I was in the White House yesterday, and I will tell you all about it. It's a crazy day over there, just inside the Oval, inside the White House, and then in the East Room with President or Prime Minister Modi of India, with Trump doing that presser late into the evening. Really cool day. We'll get to that at the end of the show. But first, very important day, very important story. A guy named Keith Sullivan. Well, he was wrongly indicted for murder for protecting his family at 2 a.m. on his own front porch. The man he shot was a well-known criminal and a deranged individual who had terrorized their community of Grove Oak, Alabama for numerous years. According to a video by the group We Stand With Keith, things happened in the hours leading up to the shooting, making Sullivan believe his life and the wife of his wife and child were in danger. Bagwell, the perp, now deceased, also leapt towards Sullivan on his own front porch, on Sullivan's front porch. Sullivan later passed a polygraph test saying he believed Bagwell had a weapon. Listen.
The police chief of nearby Geraldine testified that Bagwell was known to law enforcement and the community as dangerous and armed. And it wasn't a matter of if he would be shot, but rather when. Despite overwhelming testimony that more than demonstrated that Sullivan met the required preponderance of evidence, the presiding judge denied his immunity with no reasons given. The appeal is currently at the Alabama Supreme Court, and the criminal trial is set for the spring of 2025.
All right, we're going to bring in this gentleman who is Daniel Penny's attorney as well, Stephen Razor. And you're going to defend Keith Sullivan in the case. He joins us now. Really, really good to speak to you, Stephen. I don't think I set it up properly. I saw the video. It's a very compelling video. So your client is a man of the community. He owns a business. He goes to church. He plays the piano at church. And this lunatic is a known lunatic who presents himself at midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and anyone would be fearful. Now, this becomes a stand your ground case, if I'm right, and I'll let you take it from there. And Stephen, really good to have you.
No, absolutely, Eric. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your interest in this case. I mean, this is a quintessential justification case, right? Because this is at our client's front door, right? So he's defending his castle, right? So there's no other place that you could possibly be in the world other than your own home. And at the time that he was defending his home, his wife and his daughter were there. There was an imminent threat on the front porch, and that was this individual, Mr. Bagwell. You know, interestingly, as you had indicated quite correctly, is that he was known amongst law enforcement as being a violent, deranged, meth user, arsonist. He'd been known for firing into neighbors' homes. He had a standoff with the police where he had to be smoked out by tear gas to get him out of the house. You know, what really sets this case up is not just the generalities of having somebody like this standing on your front porch, if you can imagine, at 2 o'clock in the morning with absolutely no business being there, never had been there before. Obviously had violent intentions. You could see him on the security camera acting erratically, swinging his arms and just acting in a sort of violent rage. Well, interestingly, earlier so it's early in the morning, right? So early the night before, right, around 11 p.m., right? His Mr. Sullivan, our client's wife, reports hearing a gunshot. Mm-hmm. So right away, our client Keith Sullivan is very concerned about this, and he's scared that this guy is the one shooting. If I may interrupt, Stephen, again, the attorney for Keith Sullivan, also Daniel Penny's attorney, former attorney. Whatever. So right. The wife hears the gunshot. Keith calls the cops, reports he hears something. And it was the second time. He called the cops twice, right? So I didn't mean to disrupt you. I want to make clear that there were 2 calls to the police that night prior to the shooting, right? Well, what actually happened, and that's pretty much correct, except that his wife initially had told Keith, our client, Keith Sullivan, about the gunshot. It was another hour or so later that Keith hears this guy, Mr. Bagwell, destroying his own trailer, which is, you know, a stone's throw away, maybe 100 yards at most. Here's him destroying his trailer. Now he's getting scared. You know, our client's getting scared that this guy's on a rampage, right? So he calls the cops. So the cops do respond, and Keith warns them. He says, look, guys, you know, realize who you're dealing with here, and he could very well be armed. He doesn't want the police getting hurt, right? So they go in and they speak to Mr. Bagwell, and Mr. Bagwell reports that he's in this violent rage because his neighbors have been, and you know, using the most gentle terms that I can, have been sodomizing him for the past, you know, hours throughout the day, just in a, you know, crazy mental state, right? So what he does then is he asks the cops, he says, so who called the cops on me? So the cops are smart enough to know, I'm not going to tell you that, but they weren't smart enough to know you don't immediately leave there and go to my client's house, who's the one who called, right? So the police, in essence, leave a trail to the caller, which is our client, Mr. Sullivan. So Keith knows that. He knows they went over to Mr. Bagwell first, and now they're over at Mr. Sullivan's house, our client, alerting Mr. Bagwell, well, I'm the one that called the police, right? Within a half hour of when the police came to our client's home, there's Mr. Bagwell on the front porch. That's concerning. That's scary. And something I want to bring up too, Eric, I know you're well aware of this, right? We're talking about DeKalb, Alabama, right? Not New York City, right? So the response time for the police is about 40 minutes. Okay, so you have this deranged individual who our client believes to be armed on his front porch, banging on his door at 2 o'clock in the morning. Who's not going to be scared at that moment? Who's not going to feel they have to protect their family? And that's what Mr. Sullivan did. But first, he did, as you had indicated before, this is the second call to the police. He told his wife, call the police, this guy's crazy. He goes outside to confront him, knowing the police are going to take 40 minutes to get there.
Incredible. So the Bagwell reaches in his pocket for something, maybe even move towards Sullivan, your client, and Sullivan takes the shots, right, and kills Bagwell. What's going in Sullivan's mind at that time?
So at that time, he has to come out of the house, right? Because if he doesn't come out of the house, police aren't going to come. The next thing he could know at that point is that there's shots being fired through his home. Or I didn't mention this before, but he's also known by my client to have burned down his own house. So he's a known arsonist. The guy has 40 minutes to play around outside by himself, you know, unsupervised. His house could be in flames. If Mr. Sullivan's forced out of his home, what's going to happen if he's there, if Mr. Bagwell's standing there with a weapon, right? So he goes out to confront him, and Mr. Bagwell, he right away shows that he's lying. He's making up some kind of crazy story about, you know, wanting to borrow his car or take his car or something like that. And obviously, he has no good intention to be there. And at that moment, our client shows the weapon, and Mr. Bagwell, at that point, does turn around as if to leave, but he appears to be grabbing for something in his back pocket. He also has what appears to be a weapon grasped in his hand, which ends up being a chrome-tipped lighter. So at that point, when he went to reach for something, is when our client opened fire.
And this is we're showing Bagwell. We're showing Bagwell on the screen right here. You know, Keith. The reason why this was interesting to me at first, I'm like the lighter, and then then you hear what you just said, and I had read that Bagwell had previously burned down his own trailer, which he didn't own, but he still burned it down nonetheless. So even a lighter in that instance technically could be a weapon. If he's thinking about burning down Sullivan's house, that technically could be a weapon, yeah?
Well, 100%. And also, we didn't know what other incendiary devices he could have on him. Plus, this is something that he could have known, and that's Mr. Bagwell at the time, and obviously my client knew. There was a gas can under the front porch right there. So if there was going to be some flames ignited, that could have went up very quickly and been a very dangerous situation for our client. That was something he was fearful of. And by the way, another thing too is that he was already being held on charges related to a shootout with the police. He was let out on bond. And then what ended up happening is that the district attorney, only 3 days before this, had asked the judge and was granted to revoke that bond. Why? Because this individual is a danger to the community. And that's how much of a danger he is. They actually, the judge agreed to revoke that bond and to pick this guy up, but they didn't get to him quick enough.
We're going to get to the law in a second. I just want to continue, just let my audience know exactly when went down. So again, your client owns a business in town, music, some sort of music business, plays the piano for a local church, and his wife and young daughter are in the house at the time this is going on. This has to affect people's decision whether or not to leave the house with a firearm to protect. If you're home alone, then maybe who knows, but your wife and your kid are there, and that may change the narrative for your client Sullivan. I'm sorry, you can continue on that, and then we'll get to the law in a minute.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, he was defending himself. I mean, you mentioned Danny Penny's case. I mean, Danny was in essence doing the same thing. He was defending the other people, the riders. In this case, he's defending not so much himself, but he's the defender for his family, right? And it's his family that he's defending and making sure that they're safe from a known threat standing on his doorstep with obvious violent intentions.
Let's listen to Control Room, play SOT AO01, Stand Your Ground video.
The police chief of nearby Geraldine testified that Bagwell was known to law enforcement and the community as dangerous and armed. And it wasn't a matter of if he would be shot, but rather when. Despite overwhelming testimony that more than demonstrated that Sullivan met the required preponderance of evidence, the presiding judge denied his immunity with no reasons given. The appeal is currently at the Alabama Supreme Court, and the criminal trial is set for the spring of 2025.
And I was around when Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman case happened. It was very clear that stand your ground is going to be a law that's going to be protected, at least in the state of Florida. What is it about this case that Alabama dropped the ball, so to speak, in your opinion, Mr. Counselor?
Well, it's hard to say because when the judge presided over the stand your ground hearing, which is by the request of our client, the hearing occurred. It's a preponderance of the evidence standard. By all indications, based on everything we just discussed, he met that preponderance standard. However, the judge denied that application, allowed the case to proceed. The case could have been stopped right then and there, but it wasn't. However, the judge never gave his reasoning as to why. So it's hard for us to really build off of this to say what is the possible reason why you would say this man who's defending his own home is somehow not entitled to defend himself when you know you can't rely on the police. So the answer is we don't know why we're here. And in fact, that trial is scheduled for beginning of March, which is next month. This is only weeks away. We've asked for continuances and have been denied. This case is moving forward very quickly. And I do want to make your audience aware of one other thing, too. You want to talk about how can people get involved? I mean, we have a Give, Send, Go account for legal defenses, which are astronomical in any type of a manslaughter, homicide, murder case. But number two is that, the judge in this case could have stopped this and didn't. However, there's one other person that can stop this from going forward, and that is the Attorney General of Alabama. Because the Attorney General could come in and take over this case and simply get rid of it and say, let's get the just result here and stop this prosecution. The Attorney General has the authority to do that. And if you want to get into a letter writing campaign, this is a good cause to go for.
Attorney General being, I don't know the Attorney General of Alabama. Who is that?
Attorney General Marshall. Marshall is the last name.
Democrat, Republican, matters.
Well, yeah, he is, but it does actually matter because 87% I think are Republican down there. So he should have an interest in this case because it definitely does get the attention of Republicans in Alabama.
Stephen,
people,
the guy's a known
hundreds and thousands.
He's a known criminal. He had altercations with cops. He's burned his own home down that he didn't own. He's had problems with neighbors. He approaches a man with his family in the evening. He's got a lighter in his hand. He's a known arsonist. He's on the man's doorstep, banging on the door, spends an ample amount of time. Cops have come. They've been called twice. They've come once already. They've basically led this man to there's so much evidence, there's so much mitigating evidence, at least to have this case thrown out under the stand your ground laws. I'm shocked it's gone. I read somewhere the arresting officer didn't understand stand your ground. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he admitted that the first he ever actually looked into the law was when after the arrest was made. That says something, because maybe the arrest shouldn't have been made, right? I mean, our client did give a full statement. Again, he called the cops, right? Our client wanted the cops to be there. Once they did get there, he gave them a full statement, sat down with them, talked to them. And then again, like you indicated in the beginning of the show, that he had sat down for a lie detector test. Yet the case goes forward. But I think that does come down to a misunderstanding of the law. And just the fact that someone's dead does not mean that an arrest should be made.
Well, we will. I'll tell you what, I'm going to send this interview to the Attorney General of Alabama personally, make sure the office is aware of the case, and maybe you will get some sort of relief from that. Can you just, while we have you, Daniel Penny, first of all, how's he doing? And I'd like to, you mentioned it's kind of like the Daniel Penny case. Which one's a steeper, which one's a taller climb for you?
Well, it's hard to say. I guess it just depends, because like for Danny's case, we were very fortunate. We had a lot of the passengers who were able to come forward and testify on his behalf. They saw everything. They were 100% supportive of Danny. So we have that element. We also have the confinement of the car and the inability to retreat. And in this case, on the other side, is that we have the fact that he's defending his home, right? So it's his castle. There's nowhere to go. And you literally have to defend your home, because if you don't, the people inside it could die. So you have a lot of similarities in that sense, because it's really more of a justification defense than it is self-defense, defending others. Differences, I mean, one difference, I guess, which is pretty plain on his face, is that Danny did not apply deadly force. In this case, our client certainly did. But the point is, in this case, is that deadly force was properly applied. In Danny's case, it was never applied.
Now, I didn't hear this, or I didn't read this. There's no sort of ringing doorbell camera, no video camera, no surveillance camera of security of any of this that you're aware of?
Yeah, we do. We actually do have a video of the incident when he's on the front porch. It's a security camera. It's black and white, but it's very clear. And like I said, that's where we saw him making those violent gestures, kind of swinging angrily in the air and like tapping his, whatever it was in his hand at the time, we learned was a lighter. But yeah, we can make that available to you.
Please make that available to us, and we will post it onto this interview, because again, we're going to send this to the Attorney General. We'll get it clipped right into this little space right here. You'll keep us informed on how this progresses. Yes, Stephen?
Absolutely, Eric. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support in this, and our client does, beyond words. So thank you so much.
And we will absolutely get Mr. Sullivan on. Maybe we'll do a phone call from. Was he free on bail? What's his status?
Yeah, he's out on bail, so he is at liberty right now. He's assisting his trial team and making the best possible defense that could be made in this case. We're working very closely with local counsel, which are absolutely fabulous. We actually have a former attorney general in this case. So the team is great. We're in place and we're ready. What we need is help with the experts and all the expenses associated with the trial. But he's got a lot of support behind him. And
what's that website? What's the website folks can donate to?
It's Give, Send, Go, and you just look up Keith Sullivan.
Keith Sullivan, Give, Send, Go. This is Stephen Reiser, the attorney for Mr. Sullivan, Keith Sullivan, and also attorney or former attorney for Daniel Penny. Wish you luck, and keep us in the loop. And I know he doesn't want to talk. Mr. Sullivan doesn't want to screw up his case at all prior to whatever happens, whatever the outcome is. But certainly as soon as you get some relief, we'd love to get him on the show with you as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that invite. I appreciate it.
All right, Stephen. Thank you. When Elon Musk bought Twitter back in 2023, $44 billion of his own dollars, by the way, he promised to restore free speech on the platform. That also meant bringing back many of the conservative voices that were removed from Twitter for voicing opinions the communists didn't like or agree with at Twitter at the time. That spooked a lot of corporations, which promptly pulled advertising from the platform. Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, Meta, Disney. Reminder that Coca-Cola, or Woca-Cola, as we've often referred to them, lashed out at Georgia over voting laws that required IDs to vote in elections. And Disney, the magical world of woke, pushed gay and transgender storylines on little kids, children, wherever possible.
And I realized, oh, it actually is true. We have many, many, many LGBTQIA characters in our stories, and yet we don't have enough leads and narratives in which gay characters just get to be characters.
It was like a year and a half ago. By the way, that was the queen of content for Disney, saying there were not enough gay and queer leads in their cartoons for little kids. So clearly, the return of conservative voices scared the living bejesus out of the woke mob of ESG-driven BlackRock-owned corporations. Musk's response back then was legendary.
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself. But go fuck yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is.
Anyway, legendary, by the way, folks. Any questions? And it says so much about Elon Musk, but this moment is what strikes me the most. Listen.
And I have no problem being hated, by the way.
I hear
Hate
you.
away. I think it's a real weakness to want to be liked. A real weakness. And I do not have that.
That's why he's the richest man on the planet. And that's what he said there. What it really is, it's what matters right now. Matters more now with what Musk is doing. That's the most important thing of all this, and what he's helping to get done on behalf of all Americans, not just him. Because the only way to create change and lead is to stop giving a damn about whether people like you or not. Let's get into it. Elon Musk has spent the first 3 weeks of the Trump presidency traumatizing the delicate socialist snowflakes of the deep state. And it's been a dream to behold. Conservatives, Republicans, MAGA, and especially those with a twist of libertarianism like me, have dreamt about shrinking the fatty government for decades. Nobody could ever pull it off. Not even the great President Ronald Reagan, who gave some of the most brilliant lines and speeches for years about the dangers of a bloated and overreaching government.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
But even the great Reagan couldn't get done in 8 years what Musk has been able to achieve in just over 3 weeks. But what's been more magical than discovering that American taxpayers are funding drag shows over the world over, that was horrible. The Democrat outrage, of course, always one of the greatest shows on earth. Watch them cry.
I've been told I have 30 seconds, so I am going to tell you that we do have to. I don't swear in public very well, but we have to fuck Trump.
They get mad at me when I swear on the show. I'm just doing it out in public. Say, a president. Well, that'll take longer than 30 seconds. But frankly, these Nazi crats have been screwing America, effing America, for too long. And Democrats call what Elon Musk is doing a so-called coup. We all know that kind of hysteria is ridiculous and will only send the Democrats deeper into depression and loss. It's so obvious to us that they're only trying to protect themselves, the Democrats, and are clearly panicked over being exposed. President Trump promised to send Musk in to clean house, and voters resoundingly said, go for it. Do what you got to do. That's not a coup, lefties. That's called a democratic process. The party that removed Joe Biden from the presidential candidacy in a literal coup is trying to blame the coup on Donald Trump and Musk. But it got me thinking about what makes a great and effective leader. President Ronald Reagan is one of the greatest of all time. Anybody with even the slightest bit of common sense knows that. Even Democrats know that. But he still cared about being liked. After all, he was the handsome descendant of Hollywood. But this is what it takes to truly instill change. You have to not give a damn what anyone says about you or thinks about you, as long as you have the law on your side and federal policies. Who the F cares what Maxine Waters thinks about you? And clearly, Musk not only doesn't give a damn what any of these commies thinks about him, but he's also having a field day trolling them in the process. What's more genius than changing your X handle to Harry Bowles just so you can hear a CNN hack say Harry Balls on the air?
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, "Democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge." And as
Best say Harry Balls. One of the things that made my weekend. Elon Musk doesn't give a damn, and why should he? He's the richest man in the world with nothing to prove. He's already told corporations trying to blackmail him to, quote, fuck off. Sorry, resoundingly so. And what's more, we have a billionaire for a president who can't be bought. First time ever. And not only that, after what they've done to him for 10 years, including impeachments, 2 assassination attempts, and all the lawfare, he's only come back stronger and more resilient. I think we may have stumbled upon a winning formula. You see the likes of Bernie Sanders, the ultimate socialist, really wants you to believe that having money makes you somehow evil.
The president is operating in a very authoritarian, illegal, and unconstitutional way. But what is clearly happening in this country right now, every single day, with Musk, with President Trump, is more and more power going to fewer and fewer people, and often people who have huge amounts of money.
Billionaires and billionaires. Gotcha, Bernie. These are the same people who would have you believe that Elon Musk is a bad guy because he's got money. But then also, they revere George Soros and Bill Gates, 2 billionaires, 2 unelected billionaires, and 2 communists. Bernie looks panicked, but Maxine Waters said the quiet part out loud.
People of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being taken up by Elon Musk and Trump, and we don't know what all they have on us.
Can you just play that one again, guys? Hear what she said at the end.
People of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being taken up by Elon Musk and Trump, and we don't know what all they have on us.
We don't know what they have on us. That's what she's worried about. That's the woman whose husband made millions upon millions playing around with the banking system in California because his wife was a banking commissioner. We don't know what they have on us. That's what they're really worried about Elon Musk finding. Because the federal government is way too big and has gone unchecked for far too long. Sizing it down was always going to take some serious balls, hairy balls maybe, and someone who doesn't give a damn about screeching. Too much regulation, politicized 3-letter agencies, an energy department that wants you to strangle the oil industry. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, you should want a leaner bureaucracy, less waste, less fraud, way less abuse, less criminal theft by our politicians especially. But Democrats clearly aren't interested in that at all. Yet again, they let their Trump derangement syndrome get in the way of actually helping America and Americans. And it's not just Democrats, folks. Mitch McConnell is a problem. And not just because he falls up and down stairs, he's making Joe Biden look sprightly, but the walking, or rather rolling case in point for term limits voted against Tulsi Gabbard. Mitch McConnell, the Republican minority leader, voted against Tulsi Gabbard. And then also voted against RFK Jr. Both are now confirmed, thank goodness, both certified change makers. This is the stuff that drives them crazy.
20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I can end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump.
Why would Democrats be against someone who wants to end the childhood chronic disease epidemic? What's there to fight against? It's like when Trump said, "What's wrong with Make America Great Again?" Why would you fight that comment? Why would Mitch McConnell, who says he had polio as a child, be the only Republican to vote against RFK? Because this is about President Trump and hating Elon Musk and RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. It's all part of the package, and that's it. But luckily, none of them actually gives a darn about Democrats winning, and neither does the rest of America. If Democrats got behind Doge, it might allow them to shred their image as the party of bloated, overspending government. In November, voters tried to send them a message. Your priorities are way out of whack. We're tired of diversity preferences and quotas. Give us a federal workforce I don't know, filled with the best people and maybe make them show up to work. 90% of the workforce, the federal workforce, was working from home when Trump took over. Do we know that? We never knew that. Stop trying to force boys into girls' sports and bathrooms and start filling potholes. If the left's reaction to Doge is any indication, that message has yet to land. The Democrat left stands guard over the status quo. You want more of that crap? Vote for them next time. You won't. They won't. You won't win. Big government now, big government tomorrow, say the Democrats. Big government forever. It's one of their pillars. Sometimes it makes you wonder who's really a conservative and who's really a progressive. But left and right should share a desire for government efficiency at least, right? I mean, if you save money on all the stuff that's legit, you Democrats, if you're in power, you can steal more shit. You steal more of our money. If you save money doing the legit stuff, you have more money to send your Hollywood friends to Ukraine. It's as unobjectionable as liberty and as essential as freedom. Nobody who wants America to succeed could possibly be against it.